Hello everyone. This is Winter Data Meetup from datazencommunity. Our speaker is Izabella Zuk, and she will talk about the non-technical problems she faced while working on different data projects and about approaches that will help to make development process smoother. Please don't forget to ask your questions in YouTube chat. Hi Isabella, it's so nice to see you here. I pass the word to you.
Hi, hello everybody. Nice meeting you. I'm very glad I can have an opportunity to share a bit of my experience with you guys. Let me move on to the presentation then. As you already mentioned, the topic for today's presentation are non-technical factors of data project success. Maybe before we start, a few words about me. I'm currently a senior software engineer in EPAM. I come from a kind of interesting background because I started my career as a data analyst, having education in statistics, but also I have a BA in international relations, which is more of like a soft skill topic. So I've been already working on data projects for over 5 years, four of which I've been working in EPAM, in various team setup in multiple roles, first as a data analyst, then as a data engineer. In terms of my personal favorite things to do, except working on data projects, of course, I enjoy good food, and basically I love cooking and all the sport activities that you can do outside. Most recently, I think my favorite one is hiking, especially friendly to do during the winter. I find myself to be, I think, kind of a good observer and a people person. That's why I would like to share some of the observations from my experience with you today. Regarding the agenda for today's meeting, I think I'll try to keep it fairly quick with an introduction of a few slides with more of like high view approach. This is why is client not always right. We're gonna talk a bit about how to understand the bigger picture and the final product across the team in the project. I'm going to talk a bit about non-technical factors that can influence the success of a data project. And then we're going to move maybe to more like specific topics with some actual hints that I would like to provide that you can start using while working in the different team scopes. After our meeting, we're going to talk about how to achieve the synergy across various team members with different seniority and different roles. We're going to discuss about clarity in terms of communication. And last but not least, I would like to present some nice framework to communicate during some crisis situation that can actually come in handy with your day-to-day work. And after that, hopefully we'll have some nice time left for Q&A. So please feel free to ask me a question. Okay, so real quick, let's move to our first topic. I added this kind of perky title, why is client not always right? But what it's really about is that why it is important to understand like a bigger picture and the final product, the final creation that you try to achieve as a team. And this is important for each and every role. So whatever is your current role on the project, whether you're data engineer, data analyst, data scientist, data quality engineer, I think this is important for everybody. So let's start from like the most basic thing, which is a task. Oftentimes, when we try to analyze the task that's been given to us, we always need to know what we need to do, obviously, right? When we need to do it. So what's the deadline? What's the time estimation? What's the priority? How we should do it. And this is basically where most of more technical roles will put a lot of focus on. Yeah. So what technologies to use, how to set up that feature, how to integrate it within a framework, maybe you need to create it, what technologies to use. So these are the things we put a lot of emphasis on. But sometimes we miss the why part. And the why part here is basically how to place your task in like a bigger system of what the project is trying to achieve. So it's always, for me, good to ask yourself, what is it really going to contribute to? A good example here can be that you're trying to build some sort of an ETL that will deliver data from point A to point B. And the point B is then going to use by who is the stakeholder, like where are we going to use it. Maybe if it goes to several Power BI reports, maybe there is something I can improve, or there is some additional risk I see. And the why part gives us actually ability to make better suggestions and better comments. Why making suggestions and comment is important when we actually discuss a task and try to understand what to be done. Many times people who plan things on high level, they don't see like the lower structure. And sometimes developers or specialists in general are afraid to speak up about some potential suggestions. For example, they do see a better way how to do a particular thing, but they're kind of afraid of sharing that thought. Or maybe they cannot come up with some better recommendation because they don't see where are we actually going into. A good example might be that you're trying to develop some sort of a feature, for example, and then you don't know that couple more steps in the roadmap, we actually need to deploy this particular feature, for example, to some other application. Maybe there are already some things we need to consider at the beginning when coming up with the initial design. This is some simple example. And another conclusion from this is that the more time we actually spend in trying to understand well what and why we need to do, the better time we can spend on planning. And better time is not always more time. So to make planning like efficient and to really be able to come up with a good solution, in my opinion, it is very important to understand the bigger scope to be able to make those good suggestions. And what is important is that I think that the most successful teams, not only in terms of data, but in general, will be the ones when the specialists and people who will actually put in the work to complete the task are also participating actively and not only when specifically asked. Okay, so now let's move briefly to non-technical factors which we need to consider when we are working on a data project. First one is kind of obvious. This is the team structure. What seniority do we have? What roles do we have? And what previous experience we have within a team. Some things to consider more to like data-specific projects is, for example, the clear definition of roles. I worked on a couple of projects in my career, and I worked both, as I mentioned, as a data analyst and then as data engineer. And for me, oftentimes it seemed to be fluent. On one project, some responsibilities came in the scope of, for example, the data scientist, but on a different project, they were already part of the data analyst. And good planning here can actually bring a lot of benefit. In terms of seniority, this is kind of obvious. Yeah, right. We have more junior and more senior partners, and this is good to have like a framework to cooperate. International project considerations, time zones, and languages. Regarding time zones, from my experience, one thing was worth mentioning here is that when you have a team with a lot of separate time zones that they start working, for example, on a different time set, it is important to divide responsibilities well within a team. On one of the projects, we had a setup where we had some of the colleagues working in one time zone and some of the colleagues working in another. And what ended up happening at the beginning is that really the cooperation and meaningful work came only between those 4 hours of overlap that we had. And with time, we managed to actually use this time better because, for example, some of the ETLs that run through the night, the team that logged in first started on some initial bug fixes of initial identification of what potentially could go wrong with the ETL run of the night. And already on the daily, when all the team was logging in, we had some, you can say, report on the situation. And the team that was staying later was more responsible for like communicating to customer who was in a later time zone. And that's how we divided the work. So that's also something you can consider. Roadmap. Roadmap is connected to planning. And here I think everybody would agree that when starting a project, it's important to have like clear goals and clear milestones and make sure that everybody understands where the project is going. This is connected to what I was talking on the first slide, but I cannot stress enough how this is important to actually come up with like a good solution. Next thing is support within a team. That's a bit connected to the synergy. So here it's important to know how we will remove potential blockers, who can help with what, and how to ask for support. Many times in my career, I've seen a situation when one of the team members was working on some sort of an implementation or some sort of a report, and he or she got blocked with some particular problem, but did not know who to come for help and did not know from where to get knowledge in terms of that blocker. And sometimes even the clarity of communication on the daily stand-up that most of the projects will have nowadays, he or she was not able to remove this set of blockers. On the other hand, what also happens a lot is that you have most experienced, most senior member on the project, and then all the questions from other team members, maybe more junior or just simply less experienced, will come to that particular person. In my opinion, that's not also great, and this leads us a bit to the next part, which is creating the backup plans. In order to avoid the situation when we get very blocked with something and the person who's less experienced or simply junior in some topic does not know where to reach help, or at the other hand, when we get the more senior and more experienced person overwhelmed with a lot of questions and a lot of responsibility from all over the place, what is important is that we should always keep good knowledge sharing within the team. And that seems obvious, but honestly, every time when I was working on a bigger data-related project, and I think that's true also for any other project, not only in data, we had a situation that if one of the key members of the team either quit or simply changed the project or went on a longer vacation, we faced some problems and issues with proceeding with development or even supporting the current solution. So knowledge sharing is very important, and also something that I think personally I always cheer for that on the project that I work in is participating in releases. So knowing what exactly is being released and knowing who could be contacted with each part of that. Oftentimes when a person is closed in a silos and is working only on her or his particular task, he can lose track of what is being developed at the same time on the platform. And who knows, maybe there is something you can reuse, maybe there is some good idea that you can put into your implementation, or maybe there is some condition that will actually influence what you are working on. And when you're tracking what's happening on the platform, when you're working on your report, feature, or your model that's supposed to predict something, that way you can come up with like a better and more comprehensive solution. Another thing is how to manage the risk. So oftentimes on the projects that I work with, we had some sort of a critical product that was delivered to the business or some stakeholder who then needed this product to perform some either business decision or some other action that's important for the business. Many times a person notices an issue but does not really know who to report it to, and is that issue really critical? So I think what is important on a data project is knowing how to identify that the issue is critical, which leads to how to identify that the service is critical, and then knowing how to approach issues on different environments. For example, the issue on production should be communicated in a specific way to specific parties, or maybe there are several reports that your team is supporting that are critical over all other reports, and they should be addressed immediately with some particular severance. This seems very obvious, but in reality, on a lot of projects, these things get kind of lost lost in the communication. And I think this one will be especially true for some legacy projects. And another thing, this one I think we all know, is putting a realistic timeline. So always the person who is actually going to work on the task should participate in estimating it. What I've often seen is that more junior or less experienced colleagues were given a task that was estimated by their senior colleagues, and then we had a problem with completing sprint within the scope. Or from the other hand, it can go also that a person who is more experienced in some field will finish a task much faster. Okay, now when we have all of those considerations, let's move to the synergy in the team. So basically, what is synergy? If you don't know, or we would like to kind of put it into perspective, it's the situation when the cooperation of two or more organizations, substances, or any other agent can produce a greater effect than all of those separate effects summed together. So within the team in the data project, you have usually a lot of different roles. You have data engineers, you have data analysts, you have business analysts, you have data scientists. And the first step of achieving this synergy is having these roles well defined. So each of the roles should have some sort of a particular expertise. An example, a data scientist's main expertise is developing prognostic models, right? So they mostly deal with maths, they deal with building models. Not necessarily they need to deal with some sort of data automation. And this leads us to sharing the skill between those roles. We should use the help of our colleagues, even if they're from a separate role, to unblock if needed, so then everybody can focus on the expertise. What I experienced, and actually more than once, is that a colleague who was working on some either data analytics or more data science focused task got blocked for several number of days with some connection issue or some sort of a problem with some automation or some small ETL he tried to set up to test his model or train it. And in situations like that, a lot of time and effort can actually be saved by asking colleagues from the other roles. For example, ask your fellow data engineer to maybe either develop some simple framework that you can use on your Jupyter notebook, or maybe figure out how to solve the issue with authentication that you've came across. And it also works the other way. Maybe you in your work as data engineer need some help from a data analyst to validate, or maybe you require some suggestion what would be the best schema to put the data into. At the same time, I think it's important to take time to enable your colleagues. So oftentimes what I've seen on the projects is that different roles worked in some sort of silos. When I worked as a data analyst, I started my career and I was still like a junior data analyst. We within the analytics part of the team used to waste a lot of time. We used to spend a lot of time on trying to automate things. But then it turned out that it would save us a lot of days, a lot of weeks of work if we would have a data engineer in the team who would actually help us set everything up. And right now, when I, on my previous project, work as a data engineer, we actually were able to provide some enablers for our data analytics and data science colleagues for them to use within their work. So it actually allowed them to focus on what they do best. So analyzing the data or building some models. And also the last thing, I think it's important to always consider your shareholders' opinion across the team to make a smart solution. If you're developing an ETL that's then that produces the data that it's supposed to be used within some prognostic model, I think it's also always good to touch base with your model building data science colleague to discuss about maybe there's something special he or she should think we should include, or maybe there are some additional considerations to make this solution as smart as possible. Again, working within those strict silos can actually sometimes lead to some inefficient work and not ideal using of each person's expertise. In order to achieve that synergy, there is one key thing that actually is oftentimes not that obvious on IT projects, and it's communication within the team. Especially now when we work, most of us works remotely, and our team members are located in a lot of different countries and a lot of different time zones. It's sometimes hard to keep like a clear communication. And in my opinion, of course, in terms of non-technical aspects of a project, clarity and clear communication is a key to quality. So why communication can be not clear? First thing is that the message can be too long. So the real message can get lost in a lot of gibberish that's been sent. The message does not have proper recipients. So the message is correct, but then the people who are receiving are not actually the ones who should. The message is not stated clearly, so there's some vague explanation to it, or it's not stated at all. And that is actually, I would say, most of the contents that I've seen, that someone was either afraid to speak up or he thought that it's not needed to do so, yeah? Such as you could ask a team member for some help, but you decide to spend a lot of time or resolving some problem by yourself. And the last thing, there can be some other obstacles to communicating the message. And one thing I had in mind here is that a lot of times when cooperating with a client or non-technical party, engineers or analysts will try to, specialists in general, will try to deliver some very specific technical details. And that can lead to misunderstanding of a problem. For example, to ignoring like the real weight of it. So it's important to identify this potential obstacle and actually try to adjust a bit the way you communicate to a proper recipient. So, for example, to your technical colleague, you will speak with more technical details about some problem, but to a client party that not necessarily has all that knowledge, maybe you should keep the information more high view. And again, this seems obvious, but actually I've seen a lot of times that this was not working properly. So there are some benefits of this communication that's clear. For communication between team members, this is again helping achieving synergy in the team. It removes blockers because if we communicate them, then we can remove them quickly. And what I believe is that we share ideas, we improve our ideas. So it's not always good to stick to just what you think is best. Clear communication can lead to improving your implementation. Between developers and business stakeholders, I think this is kind of important. We forget about it, that if we communicate on what is going on, then we show some sort of dedication, we show that we care, and also we eliminate a lot of uncertainty. So for people who are more of like a business end of a process, I get the feeling that they sometimes have this feeling of uncertainty with the technical process, what is going on. And if we try to communicate with what we are progressing, what's the status, then it actually can lead to better relationship with your business stakeholder. And between devs and BAs, here can be a similar situation. So I think it's important that the devs participate in curating stories. It leads to clearer definition of the tasks and better evaluation on time spent. And also, the better the BA can understand like the potential technical blockers, then the easier it will be to communicate it to the business. And here's some practical tips I decided to put in terms of particular types of communication. So first, it's the email. In terms of text, very good practice, I think, is to either underline or like make bold the part of the text that you want person to see first. I think it's good practice that if you actually see an email within first 30 seconds, you know what's there and what's the important parts. If you really need to write a long email, good practice, I think, is to summarize the message in 1 or 2 sentences at the beginning and then put all the rest of it below. So the party that sees the email can decide that, for example, okay, I don't need to read it now, I can go back to it later. And review the recipient list. Only the necessary contact, I think, should be put in this email because oftentimes people tend to play less attention into emails that have like 300 people included. In terms of speaking a call, always try to set the goal and agenda of a meeting if that's possible, because then it's easier to determine who should join and for what purpose. And avoid long monologues with complex issues. That's exactly what I'm doing now, making a long monologue. I'm sorry. So it's always good to catch attention of your listener. For example, ask, what do you guys think? Am I being clear? Like, to avoid speaking for a long period of time and rather try to interact, even if that's a simple question. And again, review the attendance. Something I learned the hard way is that if there's a meeting with a lot of people on it, oftentimes people are less happy to share their opinions freely and are less glad to actually discuss with open mind. And general, something that saved a lot of things when working on a project is that even if you see a problem with some sort of implementation, or you don't like something that's been done and you do not see a solution to it yet, it's always good to raise that problem, because maybe someone else will come up with a solution. Maybe even like noticing the problem can already bring some benefit, yeah, and then you can brainstorm or come up with some solution to it. And if you have a suggestion on implementation, it's always good to let the person know. But it's important to respect other people's ideas. What I've seen a lot of times is that people were actually not very kind and polite when commenting on other people's implementation. And I think that's very not okay. You should always consider someone put work into this implementation. Of course, you have right to criticize it, but always remember to make it respectfully. Maybe sometimes even it's good to make some sort of like one-to-one suggestion. And don't wait too long with communicating issues and blockers. This is something I've seen a lot of times, that the issue happened 10 minutes after daily and the person waited like a day to communicate that he or she has a blocker. That's also not great. We should usually inform about this stuff earlier. And actually, this is kind of connected to this knowledge sharing and communication framework between different seniors, right? So let's say that you have a go-to person that you would talk to first, and then you communicate the blocker. Or maybe there is some common chat where you can inform and ask for some help or some consideration. Okay, and now the final part, some advice on how to communicate when there is a problem. Let's say that you notice that there was a bug in your implementation. One of the ETLs failed. The report that client desperately need at 7 a.m. is empty. This happened to all of us a lot of times. So first thing, how we should communicate during this crisis. And this is coming from my experience, but also coming from a lot of like communications study and courses that I did at some point. And for me, the biggest simplification is to do it quickly, clearly, openly, and progressively. And what all of that means. So first of all, quickly. As soon as you notice that there is some issue, I think it's important to send out some sort of a first information. And we will go through some examples in a moment. Clearly, once we get exactly some more information on the issue, we should notify what is the problem and also what does this mean. And this is connected to communicating things to people who are not necessarily technical parties. So yeah, you can say that, yeah, the service is down and this means you will not get this report at 7 a.m. Then what could cause it? Who will fix it? Is there any help needed? Things like that. So just communicate clearly, more details. Also, communicate openly. Oftentimes, those issues that we face on production will result from some sort of a mistake, can be a human mistake. And I think to build like a trust and clear communication within the team, it's good to say that, yeah, that was fault of like, for example, say that was my fault, or there was a fault of this or that specific factor. And I think that open communication is actually good practice, because we all make mistakes and we all learn from them. And then progressively, this is very important. So once we find the root cause and once we fix it, what we will do or what we've already done to avoid this from happening. Yeah. Maybe, for example, we should add some unit tests. Maybe we should work on our CI/CD. Maybe we should review how we do a PR, or maybe from more like analytical perspective, maybe we should design additional metrics to the report. Yeah. And here I put it into actually steps, so make it better. First is first information, then detailed information plus ETA. So already in the second information, we should provide where we plan to solve it. Then if there's needed, and most cases it is, update to an ETA. And the last thing is like the resolution email and precautions taken with time. And this can take two phases. First is unofficial communication. This is usually like Slack or Teams. And this is example of messages that I wrote as, I would say, a like junior member who is notifying his team leader that, hey, I found a problem, and yeah, like we're gonna have an issue. So first message is the first information. Hey, how's it going? Was checking some events from service X. Seems like we have nulls in the field Y. This is completely, dummy example, but I am checking what's going on. Reporting can be affected, so let's let them know to watch out. And this already, even though you see there's not a lot of information in this communication, I found that it's still very beneficial because it already raised a flag. There's a problem. We're investigating this problem, like raises awareness. Maybe we should notify someone. The second information is detailed information. I found the issue. It's my fault. I made a mistake. And this is again the clarity. In the column mapping in job Z when working on ABC feature, I will fix it in 2 hours and send for review. So here we have ETA. Of course, there is some problem and the ETA gets elongated. Seems like there were some problems in my initial solution, need another 1 hour to finalize it. So this is step 3. And step 4 is the final resolution email or message. And here in unofficial communication, it can look like, okay, I fixed the issue. Here's my solution to review. I added additional unit tests to make sure we'll avoid that in the future. So this additional unit test part is for taken precautions, which actually I think is a very good thing because it shows that we did not ignore the issue. So that would be for unofficial communication. And what is very important is that the update on the ETA should always come before this stated ETA is there. This is especially important when your project is working on something business critical, and the asset that you're delivering is very and critically important. So a lot of time this will build like confidence that you understand the necessity of informing when the data will actually be delivered. And this is a similar example, but this time this is more to like official communication. So for example, if for some reason you need to communicate to your business party, then you can use this framework. So here we identified an issue in service X. The data resulting from service X is not safe to use. Affected reports are A, B, and C. We are working on identifying the root cause and establishing ETA. So this is a message that you would send when you know that there is a problem, but not yet exactly what is the problem and when we will fix it. But it's important because it shows that you're actually working on the issue and that some sort of it's under control. The second part, our developers have identified the issue. It's connected to human error that went unnoticed during review. Data in reports A, B, and C is not safe to use. ETA is for 2 hours, and you can also provide time zone because a lot of people working in different time zones. It's always good to provide like that. We are working on resolving the issue due to some problems we face. We need to update the ETA to 12. And the final mail, issue is resolved, data and reports A, B, and C safe to use. We implemented additional unit tests to avoid such problem in the future. Sorry for any inconvenience caused. So that is the framework that I've been using, and I've learned from people who I actually worked with on the data projects. And to be honest, this is something I swear by when communicating crisis management, because oftentimes when you're stressed, and there's a lot of things going on and you don't know where's the issue, you need to investigate and so on. It's very easy to get lost in this communication. But then the clarity and like building trust with this sort of communication will actually bring a lot of benefit to the team. Okay, so that would be it from my side. I will end my very long monologue and now I will, give back the word.
So now you're ready for questions, right?
Yes.
I thank you for your talk. I could totally relate to this knowledge sharing problem that you highlighted. And there is a question in our chat. What are the best approaches for knowledge sharing inside the team with many newcomers? What is your opinion?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think very important part of that is, especially with a lot of newcomers, is to having some sort of either documentation on, for example, what is very good in my experience, some sort of recordings, for example. Every data related project will have some common introduction that you need to do. Yeah, there will be a common part that needs to be done for each and every role, and then a specific introduction that can be done separately, for example, for data engineer, separately for data scientist, separately for data analyst. If you will have some pre-recorded sessions, the specific for each and every role, then you can actually save a lot of time of the person who's giving this introduction. And usually the introduction is been given by the most senior and most experienced and also most busy person. So how I would suggest to do that, and this was something I introduced in two of the projects that I worked in, was to have like sort of a cheat sheet for knowledge sharing for newcomers. So you can have some sort of videos or pages on Confluence, and you should list them in the order. First do this, then read this, then watch this, then do that. And to a specific extent, they will actually be the same per each role. But after reaching certain level of knowledge, then there should be specific onboarding for data engineer and specific onboarding for let's say data scientists, right? Because they work on a bit different tasks. But another thing I would suggest is that there should be like an owner within a team who already works on a project on onboarding the newcomer. So the newcomer is usually, a bit overwhelmed, especially if that's more junior colleague. And he or she should have like some sort of a buddy. This is a bit of a corporate word, but someone to go to and ask questions. Even if this person is not most senior and will not be able to answer all of those questions, let's say he or she will be able to answer the half, and the next half only can be routed to some team lead or senior member. So this is for the newcomers, I would say. Come prepared.
Thank you. And about the last part of your presentation, you told us a lot about communication. But what if recipients are correct, questions proper, but there is just no reply for some reason? Maybe the recipient is too busy, or maybe he or she just doesn't want to handle my problem. What do you suggest?
That is a very good question, actually. And that is also what happens a lot of times. So I would say first thing is that it's more for like maybe project manager thing, but it's good to think why it happens. Maybe this particular person is having a lot of knowledge, or maybe all the knowledge in particular field, and has simply too many tasks. For example, he's working on critical feature, he's communicating with business, he's onboarding newcomers, he or she, and simply there is no time to answer the question. And here comes the knowledge sharing. So what I think, there should always be more than one person who has some knowledge in this area. So then we will not end up with one overloaded person answering all questions. But if it's too late and already we need to get an answer for a recipient that's not replying, honestly, I would not hesitate to wait. Well, like the business convention is to wait 24 hours. But if that's critical, I would not even wait that long. And I would politely come back and ask. For example, if it's a message in Teams, I usually do it like, hey, do you have an update or this? Or maybe there is some other person who I can contact. Yeah. And this happened a lot of times to me, that actually I was pointed into some other direction from this person. If it's more serious business communication, that I would suggest to work 24 hours and then politely ask for an update. And unfortunately, if there is no reply after some times, then it's probably to be escalated if you cannot resolve this question by yourself. But this situation actually means that the communication and like knowledge sharing within the team is not working properly, because it means that the person is probably overloaded. And there was also mentioned, what if he or she does not want to answer the question? Yeah, that's a very specific situation, I think. So yeah, here maybe there's a good way to ask that person, like after several asking for updates, maybe, I don't know, he does not want to help out with the particular problem. But yeah, I think It's never a problem to ask for an update, especially if it's like less official communication. I would not hesitate to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Isabella, for your presentation. It was really interesting. Yeah, so next speaker is Cassette. So she will tell a really interesting story about her migration to DataSphere. So yeah, if you're interested about joining DataSphere, so please. Yeah, thank you, Isabella, one more time. So see you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.